One room, one chance, one impossible choice. She was humanity's last diplomat. He was the alien ambassador who fell in love with her. And someone in that room was about to destroy everything. Chapter 1. The station at the end of the neutral zone. The Vorkai had a saying that translated, roughly, as, "Humans are the only creatures in the known galaxy who walk toward a thing that frightens them." Ambassador Kael-Voss of the Third Spiral Dominion had always assumed it was an insult. Standing in the docking corridor of Way Station Helix, 7 watching Commander Lyra Vassin stride toward him through a cloud of pressurized steam and low oxygen warnings. He was beginning to think it was the highest compliment his people knew how to give. She was small by human standards. He had studied the species extensively, with dark eyes that cataloged everything in a room the moment she entered it, and a jaw set at an angle that suggested she had already decided how this was going to go. Behind her, the station shuddered from a proximity blast. Warning lights strobed amber. Somewhere in the superstructure, a hull seal was failing. Ambassador Kael-Voss. She stopped 2 feet from him and extended her right hand. The human greeting gesture, open palm, no weapons. "I'm told we have approximately 4 hours before this station vents into space. I'd like to use them productively." Kael-Voss studied her hand. The Vorkai did not touch. Physical contact between unbound individuals was considered an act of profound vulnerability, a declaration that you trusted someone enough to let them feel your pulse. He had read this in his briefing notes. He had prepared a polite refusal. He shook her hand. Her grip was firm, warm. He felt her heartbeat through her palm. Fast, controlled, the rhythm of someone managing fear rather than free of it. And something else, something that moved through the nerve clusters in his secondary fingers like a current he had no name for. "Productively," he said. "Yes, I agree." Chapter 2. One room. The station's emergency protocol had sealed most of Helix 7's interior bulkheads to contain the hull breach, which meant that Ambassador Kael-Voss, Commander Lyra Vassin, her aide Lieutenant Daro Chun, and Kael-Voss's attaché, the silent and watchful Vorkai diplomat named Sereth, were all confined to a single pressurized compartment, a mid-level guest suite, 2 sleeping platforms, 1 viewport overlooking the stars of the Mirage Rift, and a situation that no diplomatic briefing had ever prepared any of them for. "This is undignified," Sereth said. He said most things as though reading from a list of grievances. "This is survival," Lyra replied, already pulling up the station schematics on her wrist panel. "Dignity is optional. Oxygen is not." Kael-Voss watched her work. Humans, he had been told, became erratic under pressure, emotional, irrational, prone to what they called panic. Lyra Vassin appeared to become sharper. Every crisis seemed to strip away something unnecessary and leave only the essential. A mind moving at speed, hands that did not shake, a voice that stayed level even when the lights flickered and something large and structural groaned in the walls. "The breach is on deck 9, she said. "We have 4 hours of sealed air in this compartment, maybe 5 if we keep movement low. Emergency repair drones should reach the breach in 3. She looked up. "We're going to be fine." "You don't know that," Daro said. "No," she agreed. "But I know panic costs oxygen, so we're going to be fine." She said it again, calmly, like a fact she was choosing into existence. The Vorkai do not have a word for hope. They have a word for the act of continuing despite evidence. Kael-Voss had always found it an exhausting concept. Watching Lyra Vassin, he began to understand why humans build entire religions around it. The sleeping arrangements became, briefly, a diplomatic incident. The Vorkai did not share sleep space with non-bonded individuals. It was not etiquette, it was biology. Vorkai entered a partial consciousness state during rest cycles, during which their emotional resonance fields became unshielded. To sleep near someone was to let them feel, faintly, everything you felt. It was something done only with a Kael-Voss, a bonded partner. It was, in the bluntest translation, an act of love. "I'll take the floor," Kael-Voss said immediately. "You're 7 feet tall," Lyra said. "The floor is 3 feet wide. I'm accustomed to difficulty." "Ambassador." She looked at him with those dark, cataloging eyes. "We are 2 diplomats trapped on a dying station. I promise I am not going to make this strange." He almost told her then. Almost explained what Vorkai resonance fields were. What proximity during rest cycle meant for his kind. What the fact that he could already feel the edges of her emotional presence. Steady, bright, shot through with controlled fear, and something warmer underneath, was doing to his secondary nervous system. Instead, he said, 2 sleeping platforms. 1 for each of us." 2 sleeping platforms, she agreed. 1 for each of us. Sereth, across the room, said nothing. But Kael-Voss felt his attaché's attention settle on him like a stone. Chapter 3. What the stars hear. It was the viewport that undid them. At the 3rd hour, when Darrow had fallen into an exhausted sleep and Sereth sat motionless in the way Vorkai sat when they were pretending not to monitor everything around them, Lyra moved to the viewport and looked out at the mirror drift. Kael-Voss found himself standing beside her before he had made a conscious decision to move. The drift was the graveyard of a war fought 600 years ago, before humans reached the stars, before the Dominion spread to its current borders. Dead suns hung in the middle distance like cold lanterns. The wreckage of ships from a dozen species drifted in slow, eternal procession. It was the reason Helix 7 had been built here. Neutral ground, because nothing living had claimed it. A place that belonged to history instead of anyone. "It's beautiful," Lyra said quietly. "I know that's a strange thing to say about a graveyard." "No," Kael-Voss said. "My people say the same. There is a word, Valthessa. It means beautiful because it is gone. Beautiful because it cannot be taken from you." She turned to look at him. The viewport light caught the angles of her face and made her look, briefly, like something carved from the same material as the dead stars outside. Luminous and unreachable and entirely, devastatingly present. "Tell me about your people," she said. No one had ever asked him that before. Not the way she said it. Not as a diplomatic prelude or a negotiating posture. Just as a question from one person to another, in a small room at the edge of the universe, with 4 hours of air and nowhere else to be. He told her. He told her about the Spiral Dominion's 7 suns and the way the sky looked on his homeworld during the resonance season, when the electromagnetic fields of 2 moons aligned and every Vorkai on the surface felt, briefly, connected to every other. He told her about his father's death, a rare thing to speak of. Among his people, the dead were not discussed, and the way the loss had felt like a frequency going silent. He told her about the war he had been sent here to prevent, the border conflict building between the Dominion and the Human Confederation, the 12 million lives in the disputed Helix corridor, the reason both of them were on this station. She listened, not politely, completely. "My mother came to this station once," Lyra said when he finished, "before I was posted here. She was a cargo pilot. She told me the drift looked like someone had shaken a jar of fireflies and let them go." She paused. I never understood what she meant until now. The resonance field around Kael-Voss, usually something he managed with careful, practiced control, did something he had not permitted it to do in 11 years of diplomatic service. It reached toward her, just slightly, just enough that if she had been Vorkai, she would have felt it, a brushing warmth, the emotional equivalent of a hand extended in the dark. She was not Vorkai. She felt nothing. but Sareth across the room felt everything. Chapter 4. The Betrayal. The repair drones reached the breach at hour 4, just as Kael-Voss had finally allowed himself to rest. Not sleep, not fully, but the shallow half-rest his kind called Velthan, the resting of a creature that does not yet feel safe enough to go deeper. He was aware of Lyra's breathing across the room. Steady, slowing into sleep. Her emotional field and rest was different. Quieter on the surface, but deeper underneath, like a sea that looked calm from above and moved in great, warm currents below. He was aware, also, of the moment Sareth moved. His attaché crossed the room silently. Vorkai could move without sound when they chose to, and stood over Lyra's sleeping form. Not with threat, with something that took Kael-Voss a moment to name, because it was so unexpected. Grief. Sareth was grieving something that had not yet happened. "What are you doing?" Kael-Voss said. Not a question, a warning. Sareth turned. In his hand was a comm device, not standard issue. Older, encrypted with a frequency Kael-Voss recognized from intelligence briefings. The hegemony, the third faction, the ones who wanted no treaty, no peace, no diplomatic channel that might reduce their influence in the corridor worlds. "She has already written the treaty language," Sareth said, his voice barely above the ventilation hum. "I have read the draft on her panel. It cedes the Helix corridor buffer zones. The hegemony will not accept this. If this treaty is signed, the war moves here, to Dominion space, and my family is on Vethcon, which is inside the new border. So you sold her location to the hegemony." Silence. "They will intercept the station's rescue signal," Sareth said. "They will arrive before the Confederation ships. They will take her. Without the human ambassador, there is no treaty. The corridor remains disputed. The war does not come to Vethcon." Kael-Voss stood very still. He was not a violent man. Vorkai solved problems through resonance, through negotiation, through the slow pressure of collective will. He had never in his life struck another living being. His training was in language, in law, in the careful architecture of peace. He crossed the room in 4 steps and took the comm device from Sareth's hand. "The signal has already been sent," Sareth said. "How long?" 30 minutes. Perhaps less." Kael-Voss looked at the device, then at Lyra, still asleep, completely unaware that the universe had just tilted around her. Then at his attaché, a man he had served with for 9 years, a man whose daughter he had danced with at a spiral festival, a man who was, right now, the most frightened person in the room and had turned that fear into the worst possible shape. "Wake her," Kael-Voss said. Chapter 5. What Humans Do. Lyra Vassin woke the way she did everything. Fast, complete, no intermediate state between asleep and fully present. Kael-Voss told her in precisely ordered sentences. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for 4 seconds. "Okay," she said. "Okay," he repeated. 26 minutes. "The station's emergency beacon is on deck 3. If we override it and redirect to Confederation frequency, our ships arrive first." She was already pulling up the schematics. "Dara, wake up. I need your override codes." "Commander, the bulkheads," Dara started. "The breach is sealed. The drones finished 12 minutes ago. The bulkheads are unlocked." She looked at Kael-Voss. "Will you come with me?" It was not a diplomatic question. It was a personal one. She was asking whether he was, in this moment, a Vorkai ambassador with complex political loyalties, or the person who had stood beside her at the viewport and told her about his father and his homeworld and the resonance season when the sky turned gold. "Yes," he said. "I will come with you." What followed was 22 minutes that Kael-Voss would spend the rest of his life describing to other Vorkai as the most complete evidence he had ever personally witnessed that the species called humans were, in the oldest and most accurate sense of the phrase, Kael-Voss, the things that refuse to die. Lyra moved through the partially repressurized station with a calm so total it registered in his resonance field as something beyond courage, something that had gone past fear and come out the other side into pure, clear function. She bypassed 2 failed security panels with a tool she had apparently been carrying in her boot. She talked Duro through a door encryption he had never performed outside of training, while simultaneously keeping track of their position, the time, and the faint vibration in the lower decks that meant the hegemony ship was already entering docking range. At the beacon room, there were 2 hegemony operatives already inside. Kael-Voss had 7 inches and 40 pounds on the nearest one. He had never used his body as a tool of force in his diplomatic career. He used it now. Afterward, when both operatives were restrained with emergency cable ties Lyra produced from the same boot that had contained the bypass tool, he was beginning to suspect her boots were an entire emergency kit. She looked at him with an expression he could not fully read. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I chose to," he said. "There's a difference." She held his gaze for a moment. Then she turned to the beacon and began the override. Confederation ships arrived in 17 minutes. The hegemony vessel withdrew rather than engage. Sareth was taken into custody. The station, patched and repressurized and deeply undignified, held together long enough for everyone to get off it alive. Chapter 6. One Impossible Choice. The debrief lasted 2 days. The treaty negotiation, relocated to a Confederation carrier at a safe distance from the drift, lasted 9. On the 10th day, the treaty was signed. The Helix Corridor buffer zones were established. 12 million lives in the disputed worlds exhaled, collectively, in the way that people exhaled when a thing they've been afraid of for years quietly did not happen. Kael-Voss found Lyra on the carrier's observation deck at the end of the signing ceremony, standing where she always stood when she needed to think, near the viewport, facing the stars. "You should know," he said, "that I filed a full account of Sareth's actions with the Dominion High Council. His family on Vethcon will not be punished. His fear was real. His choice was wrong. Those are separate things." "I know," she said. "I already told my command the same. The Confederation won't pursue extradition." She paused. "We are apparently both inconveniently merciful." "There is one more thing I must tell you," Kael-Voss said. "Something I should have told you in that room on Helix 7, but did not, because I was, what is the human word, a coward." She turned to face him fully. "Vorkai resonance fields," he said, "are not shielded during rest cycle. To sleep near someone, to truly rest in their proximity, is, for my people, an act of bonding. It is not done with strangers. It is not done with colleagues. It is done with," he stopped, found the word, "with the one person in the universe whose frequency you want to carry with you." Lyra was very still. "That first night," he said, "in the room, I told you I would take the floor. You said there were 2 platforms." He paused. "I chose the platform. I told myself it was practical. It was not practical. I chose it because I could not make myself stay farther from you than I had to." Silence. The stars outside moved in their slow, indifferent drift. "What does that mean?" Lyra said. "For your people, what does it mean that you chose that?" "It means," Kael-Voss said, "that you are already carrying part of my resonance field. You cannot feel it. Humans don't have a receptor, but it is there. It will always be there." He held her gaze. "I am telling you because you deserve to know. Not because I expect anything. Not because the treaty or the politics or any of it requires it. I am telling you because in 11 years of diplomatic service, I have never once told anyone the truth about what I felt, and I find I am no longer willing to maintain that record." Lyra was quiet for a long time. Long enough that Kael-Voss prepared himself, carefully and completely, for the gentle professional distance that would follow. She reached out and took his hand. Both hands, the way she had in that docking corridor. Open palms, no weapons, total vulnerability. The human gesture that meant I am here, and I am not afraid of you. I don't have a resonance field, she said, but I've been thinking about you every minute of the last 9 days, which for a human diplomat during active treaty negotiations is basically the same thing. A small, wry, devastating smile. I think you're carrying part of me, Ambassador. I think I like to keep it that way. Kael-Voss felt every secondary nerve cluster in both his hands register her pulse. Fast, warm, real, and something in his chest, in the precise location where his people's emotional resonance originated, went very, very quiet. The way a frequency went quiet when it had finally, after a long time of searching, found the signal it was meant to receive. There will be complications, he said. Politically, biologically, the Dominion Council will have opinions. I once redirected an emergency beacon on a dying station with 17 minutes to spare, while simultaneously zip-tying 2 hegemony operatives, Lyra said. I think I can handle opinions. He laughed. He had not laughed, genuinely laughed, without diplomatic calculation, and longer than he could clearly remember. It felt like the resonance season on his homeworld. It felt like a frequency finding its match. One room, he said quietly. One chance. One impossible choice, she finished. She did not let go of his hands. He did not move away. Outside the viewport, the mirror drift turned slowly in the dark. Beautiful because it was gone. Beautiful because it could not be taken from you. And 2 people from different stars decided, quietly, that Valthessa was not the only kind of beautiful worth keeping. Some things you gotta hold on to. Some things held on to you back. Humanity, the Vorkai had decided long ago, was the species that walked toward frightening things. What they had perhaps not fully appreciated. What Kael-Voss was only now, standing here with warm human hands wrapped around his and the stars turning outside, was that this was not recklessness. It was not stubbornness. It was not the absence of fear. It was love. It had always been love. The loudest, softest, most terrifyingly persistent force in the known galaxy, walking straight toward whatever it wanted and refusing, with every breath it had, to stop.